Today I've been speaking about progressing the UNCRC in policy. I've been specifically looking at the concluding observations that came from the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child and how we're going to take them forward in Scotland. So we now have the framework in policy of the Children and Young People Act. We've got child rights and wellbeing impact assessments. We've got a common core of skills that the children's workforce need to have. Something we have missing is an action plan. So we don't know what actions the Scottish Government are going to commit to take forward the committee's recommendations. But overall, we do have quite a strong policy framework for progressing the UNCRC.
I've been talking this morning about the difference between children's rights-based policy and children's policy, and I come up with 5 Ps that I think capture some of those differences, and they are the principles of the Convention, using the text, process, doing children's rights impact assessment, partnership, making sure that work is conducted in collaboration, participation, involving children and young people, and public budgeting, ensuring that we know what is spent on children and how it's spent. And I think for me, the most important of those, the most important distinction from child rights-based policy, apart from making sure that it's grounded in the Convention itself, is children's participation. And there are some really interesting models going on across the world where children are being involved very strategically in all levels of government decision-making. And the one that stands out just now is the Irish National Child Participation Strategy, which has every government department and agency in Ireland ensuring that it is consulting and listening to children and taking their views into account in all matters of public decision making and policy.
The 2014 Act, that's the Children and Young People Act, brought in a duty on ministers to consider the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and how to take that forward. As part of that work, we developed a child rights and wellbeing impact assessment, both to help ministers in this duty, but also, crucially, to put children and young people at the centre of policy making in Scottish Government.
Children's rights and wellbeing impact assessments are really about putting children and young people at the centre of what we do. It's only if you think about how an individual policy can affect an individual child or young person that you really start to put their views, their needs and what's best for them at the forefront of what you're doing.
I was talking about some of the work we're doing to integrate children's rights impact assessments into proposals that we're taking forward to enhance engagement with children and young people in the Scottish planning system.
Child rights impact assessment is actually looking at law and policies, programs, local services, whatever, anticipating how it will affect children and young people and coming up with ways of dealing with any potential negative impacts. It should involve children and young people. It doesn't always do that. International evidence indicates that it has to be done in a very progressive way. So it has to include all of that, have good evidence to depend on, involve children, and come up with a product they can use and read and build on, and the rest of us as well. Scotland looks like it's well on the way to that. It's good news here. But it could do some other things. So it could make it mandatory. It's not at the moment. They're testing it out to see how it will work. It could increase the team in Scottish Government to make sure they have the capacity to really help their colleagues do this and do it well. And it could come up with child-friendly versions of it, so children and young people can look at the results of Scottish Government thinking and decide what to do next on it.
When we're looking at policy development and trying to integrate young people's feedback into it, we have to make sure that that feedback process is swift and it's a two-way dialogue. Because oftentimes when you get young people involved in policy, it's like, right, sit down, I'll write down your opinions, go away, I'll never see you again. It's that we can't have that if you want effective youth participation in policy. Additionally, I think that having some sort of standardised national framework for ensuring participation is so important. For example, with CREAs, that's why CREAs are so important. So that's child rights impact assessments. With child rights impact assessments, if you have a standardised model, you're basically systematically institutionalising participation, and that is so important.
I've been talking today about the guidance for Part 1 of the Children and Young People's Act, and the thing that I'm really emphasising loud and clear There is no point having these policy tools unless they actually result in the realisation of children and young people's rights. That's the best way to go.
Today I've been talking about policy into practice, the delivery of the UNCRC in Aberdeen City, what we do to engage children and young people and to improve outcomes for them across the city.
Aberdeen City Council are working really hard to try and get as many young people as possible involved in youth participation. They've been using sort of frameworks to assess that and try and work out where the barriers are and what things can be improved. And I think that if other local authorities actually use those sort of frameworks and look at best practice, in particular Aberdeen, then we would across the country be able to actually see youth participation in a new light.
I think that overall today what came out from me was that no matter where you work or who you work with in the room, it's that you're not the first to do what you're doing. You have to dovetail with what's already there, and that no one is working in a vacuum. There's a foundation of law, of youth groups, of companies which you have to work with to get the best results from what is already there.